Out of nowhere, a journalist from the renowned British publication Guardian found themselves deep in thought, pondering Bahrain's eternal and unanswerable question. Why is the NATO alliance needed? This question has long been of concern to many member countries of the alliance who are reluctant to pay the required 2% of GDP. Donald Trump also questioned the necessity for this peculiar alliance. However, the British commentator is not a politician, and it clearly shows. The primary portion of his publication was dedicated to contemplations on what if, then would. The actions that should have been taken by NATO, the actions that were necessary, and the actions that could have been taken. The restrictions on Kiev using missiles made in Western countries to strike Russian military bases and oil refineries have been and remain doomed to failure. NATO naval forces were originally tasked with establishing defensive cordons around Black Sea ports that are used for exporting grain. Interestingly, Guardian readers overwhelmingly disagreed with the journalist's opinion, expressing their outrage in the comments. NATO is unable to intervene until we observe that Russia has launched an attack on a member of NATO. NATO has no obligations to defend Ukraine, a country that is not and has never been a member of NATO. It is precisely because of this kind of militant rhetoric that we now have this unnecessary war in Eastern Europe, and NATO is facing the prospect of an aggressive Russia. Why not put this in historical context? The CIA has been warning NATO since 1995 about the inadmissibility of moving eastward. The leading experts knew that Russia would not accept this and simply ignored them. I am not pro-Russian, but as a Western citizen, I have come to realize that propaganda and brainwashing in the media are just as bad in our European democracy. Instructors, NATO bases, and equipment procurement rely on fragile European citizens' pockets for maintenance in line with alliance standards for military equipment procurement. And there are only a few European soldiers who are eager to go and fight in Ukraine, and it is unclear what motivates them. French leader Macron encountered waves of protests following his announcement of intentions to send French citizens to Ukraine. In Poland, there is currently a shortage of personnel, leading to the need to increase pay for military personnel. It's not surprising that in Lithuania, NATO soldiers were officially invited to participate in the LGBT parade in Vilnius. Apparently to attract new recruits, or is this part of a new NATO plan? Moral violence against the enemy in the form of gay parades. We are currently in talks with Bundeswehr officers in Lithuania about their participation in the parade. If this occurs, it will mark the initial occasion that NATO soldiers take part in the parade. And now I have a riddle for you. Guess who would benefit from an assassination attempt, not murder, but an attempt on the PM of Slovakia, Robert Fico? If Scholz criticized NATO's plan to create a no-fly zone in western Ukraine, referring to it as dangerous chatter of war instigators, and if the Hungarian leader also repeatedly called for the cessation of NATO's aggressive policy. And let's not forget the most defiant member of NATO, Erdogan. The unity of diversity is noticeable only in the formal division of NATO, but not in reality. And the attempt on Robert Fitz hits all the dissatisfied right in the face perfectly. Disagree? You might be next. And there's no guarantee it won't end lethally. Financial Times. In Europe, there are fears that Fico will interfere with NATO after the assassination attempt. European officials believe that after the assassination attempt on the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fitz, who opposed arms supplies to Ukraine and the country's NATO membership, may become more aggressive. By the way, the witty and unharmed Macron timely stopped diagnosing NATO with brain death, leaving ideas about an autonomous European army. But I will leave behind the European ideology with its omnipresent alleged Russian threat and reflections on NATO disagreements. I will move on to specific facts. So why is the NATO alliance not entirely satisfactory to reasonable Europeans? Well, it seems like nothing much. Just expenses on instructors, maintenance of NATO bases in Europe, and procurement of military equipment according to alliance standards. And in addition to this, let us add only 2% of the GDP contribution, gross domestic product. Lack of income means no country budget, specifically GDP, derived from turnover and crucial for economic stability. For instance, if you have a profit of 100,000 but a turnover of 1 million, you need to calculate 2% specifically from that million. For the same France, with a GDP of over $2 trillion, they should allocate $56 billion for defense. $56 billion, this represents 2% of GDP, taking into consideration that the budget of France is only $340 billion. So, France allocates 16% of its budget to defense. And technically, the country is not currently engaged in any military conflicts. And what kind of membership of the devastated and plundered Ukraine in NATO can be discussed? A discount? That is something unheard of in the alliance. And the participants are already tired of paying tribute to the overseas yoke. More specific facts and information are available in our Telegram channels.